Hey everybody, today I'm going to count down my 10 best movies from the decade of the 1970s. And of course, to me, it's the best decade in the history of American cinema. And we're going to count them down 10 to 1. But before I do that, I'm going to show, just to illustrate how strong the decade was, just show the movies that didn't make the top 10 list. And for those who don't know, the 70s really opened the doors for so many new filmmakers. The old way of making movies was pretty much kaput by the end of the 60s. The old Hollywood studio system had broken down, and it was more of a young person's game. People with new ideas and a new vision and techniques were done completely different, sort of run and gun style a lot of times. And independent films were big. The studios still existed, but they would hire guys out and just go from there. So, like I said, some of the new names that came into play, just as an example, there's dozens of them, but new filmmakers in the 1970s were Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Martin Scorsese, Robert Altman, Sidney Lumet, Sidney Pollack, Hal Ashby, John Cassavetes, Brian De Palma, Francis Coppola, Woody Allen, John Carpenter, Alan Pakula, Terrence Malick, Peter Bogdanovich, William Friedkin, Sam Peckinpah, Clint Eastwood, goes on from there. Just some of these guys were held over from the 60s, of course, but they had a great deal of success in the 70s and beyond. And some of these guys started in the 70s and made their mark with, iconic and landmark films. So just, again, I'm going to show, I think I have 28 movies here that I considered for the list that did not end up making it. So this shows how strong the decade is. Close Encounters and Jaws, two Spielberg movies, strongly considered, probably would have ended up in the teens somewhere, didn't make the list. Robert Altman gave us MASH from 1970, Nashville, 1975, both great movies with his style of overlapping dialogue and multiple complex characters, the Altman-esque style, didn't make the list. Terrence Malick, a guy that made two movies for like 30 years, and they're both in the 70s. Badlands, Days of Heaven. Beautiful, gorgeous, unique movies, really more stylistic than substance, not really character-driven. They're driven by this guy has an eye for landscapes and entering his characters into him and shooting around that. But Sissy Spacek and Martin Sheen are in Badlands, an early Richard Gere movie with Brooke Adams and Sam Shepard in Days of Heaven. Both tremendous. Other iconic movies that couldn't make the list or didn't make the list. Gene Hackman in The French Connection, with one of the great chase scenes in New York City. Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood's iconic role. A couple buddy movies, The Sting, Redford and Newman in the 1973 Best Picture winner. Deliverance, John Voight and Burt Reynolds in this John Boorman film from 72. Big box office hit. Again, it's not making the list. A couple of sleepers that I always liked that I would consider any other decade. Harold and Maude, of course, Hal Ashby's 1971 quirky romance between an 80-year-old woman and a 20-year-old young man with a great Cat Stevens score. Breaking Away from 1979 with a then pretty much unknown cast. Dennis Quaid came out of this as Daniel Stern, a couple of actors that would receive some acclaim later on. But this is a story of the Little Indianapolis 500, shot on location in Indianapolis or Bloomington, Indiana, And what a growing up, coming of age story. One of the best that I've seen. And of course, everybody's underdog, Rocky Balboa, 1976. It won the Best Picture, beating a bunch of heavyweights out for the title, literally. Sly Stallone wrote the script, starred in the movie. It's an absolute classic with great characters, Apollo Creed and Paulie and his trainer and Mick the trainer, and of course Stallone and his wife. Absolutely beautiful film, heartwarming, but again, didn't make the list. Others, maybe the scariest movie of the decade, The Exorcist. Great movie. Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. Everybody loves this, all the film critics and film historians. I like it too, but it's disturbing to say the least. Didn't quite make it. Coming Home, about the aftermath, a love story in the Vietnam era. Jon Voight and Jane Fonda star in this with Bruce Dern in a supporting role, all nominated. It was the runner-up for Best Picture in '78. Network, A Sign of the Times, about power and stardom and violence in society and the need to get ahead. You've got a great cast. Peter Finch won the Oscar posthumously for Best Actor. Also Faye Dunaway, Robert Duvall, and William Holden. Fantastic movie. Didn't make the cut. American Graffiti, George Lucas's early movie, shot on the streets of, I'm trying to think of the town they were in. Doesn't matter. American Graffiti. This brought on a surge of nostalgia. Happy Days became a big hit with the Fonz. Ron Howard was a star and became a director later on. You got a young cast: Richard Dreyfuss, Cindy Williams, Suzanne Summers, on and on. Ron Howard's in this as well. This is in the early '60s. Time of Innocence. Great music. There's between Elvis and the Beatles was the era for this movie, and it's absolutely irresistible. Two Woody Allen movies that I'm very fond of that almost made the list: Annie Hall and Manhattan. If you've never seen these, you're missing out. Whatever Woody is off the on his own private personal life, I could care less. But he makes great movies, or he did in the '70s. He was at his peak. This won the Best Picture. This is pretty much just as good. Shot in black and white. Beautiful movie. Diane Keaton's in both of these movies with Woody. They were dating at the time. And this movie, unfortunately, Manhattan, proved a little too much true to life, because Woody's 42 in the movie and he's dating a 17-year-old. So, who knows? Funniest movie of the decade, you could say Animal House, but Young Frankenstein's absolutely brilliant. Mel Brooks with Gene Wilder, Madeline Kahn, Terry Garr, Marty Feldman, Cloris Leachman, Peter Boyle. Great cast and absolutely hysterical. Two other films that almost made them cut the mustard. You got Al Pacino movies, Dog Day Afternoon, which I hated leaving out of my top 10, and Serpico, his first really big role other than The Godfather. It's hard to imagine the career Al Pacino had in the 70s, just one after the other. Great performances, both Godfather movies, Dog Day, Serpico. He was in And Justice for All. Just one hell of an actor. Next up, a couple Dustin Hoffman movies, Marathon Man and Kramer versus Kramer. This won Best Picture and Best Actor for Dustin. Best Supporting Actress for a young Meryl Streep as his wife, and it's a custody battle. Kramer versus Kramer pulls at your heartstrings, and it'll definitely draw some tears. And of course, Marathon Man, where he goes head to head with a Nazi hiding in New York City, played by Laurence Olivier, an absolutely brilliant performance. Dustin Hoffman is a marathon runner, gets caught up in this espionage and jewel thievery, and his brother's an FBI or CIA guy, and it's a terrific thriller. And then I've got three of my favorite actors, Jack Nicholson, that I could not put on the list, but wanted to. Five Easy Pieces, The Last Detail, and Carnal Knowledge. All three of these movies are great, but it just shows you how strong the 70s were. I found 10 movies that I like better than all the ones I've shown. So next up, the top 10. Starting off the top 10, we're going to go with number 10, The Last Picture Show. 1971, directed by Peter Bogdanovich, in just his second film. He was still in his 20s. And this is a masterpiece of filmmaking and storytelling. Bleak subject, a bunch of teenagers just graduating high school, and they're stuck in this dead-end town in Texas where there's really no industry and no chance to get ahead. It's either get out or be one of the local yokels and just sit around telling stories of the way it used to be, and it's never really going to get any better for him. So you got Timothy Bottoms, a young Jeff Bridges, Sybil Shepherd, Randy Quaid, and Ben Johnson as the old wise mentor to these kids. He won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Cloris Leachman won the Supporting Actress Oscar that year as a woman who's lonely, and she's in her 40s, I guess, and she uses the sexual prowess of some of the young guys to get by. She's stuck in either a bad marriage or she's widowed, I forget, but great movie. Bogdanovich really never repeated this success, unfortunately. I mean, he's had some films after this that were semi-successful, but this will be the best movie that he ever made. Stands at number 10 on my list. The Last Picture Show. It's rarely shown on cable anymore, so if you ever get a chance, seek it out if you like these landscape kind of movies with storytelling and interesting characters. Jeff Bridges, to one of my favorite actors, a very early performance in his career. Looks like a little kid. Next up, number 9, is The Conversation. Francis Coppola's 1974 film, starring Gene Hackman. He plays a surveillance expert who's hired by some corporate executive to find out if his wife is cheating on him with another man. So they set up this elaborate wiretapping and surveillance with cameras, and in a park in San Francisco, in a courtyard. Absolutely awesome stuff. The inner workings of a lonely person whose job is to get the goods on somebody else, and in the end, it may drive him nuts. There could be a murder involved. There could be some foul play involved. You don't know who the good guys are and who the bad guys by the end. So, The Conversation, excellent movie. Highly recommend it. Number 9. Number 8, real life drama here. All the President's Men, starring Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman, with a great supporting cast as well, led by Jason Robards as Ben Bradley, the head editor of the Washington Post. So this basically starts out as a burglary at the Watergate Hotel, and it turns into what it became, leading all the way through Nixon's underlings up to him. So we know the story, but this is very meticulous in detail and shows you what these reporters, Woodward and Bernstein, went through to get the story and expose the criminal behavior in our own government. So great job. Alan J. Pakula, director. Again, he made some movies after this that were excellent, but this is his claim to fame, along with Sophie's Choice, which was in the 80s. But great movie. Never get tired of watching it. When it comes on, I'm in. Number 7, Chinatown, directed by Roman Polanski, 1974. Again, I have 3 1974 movies in the top 10. That was a very strong year. Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway and John Huston are the principals here. Nicholson plays a detective. I guess it's either the 30s or 40s in Los Angeles. Jake Gittes, and he's hired by. He's usually a small, low-level kind of detective, ambulance chaser, divorce lawyer, peeping Tom kind of guy. But he gets involved here with some big wigs involving water, land development, and also a personality problem between a man and his daughter and granddaughter. And he gets in too deep, and there's really no way out. And Chinatown is where he's had some bad experiences in the past, and it may lead him down that road again. Great movie. Almost won Best Picture that year, but came up a little short. Jack Nicholson, of course, could have easily won the Oscar that year. They gave it to Art Carney for Harry and Tano. Probably should have been Jack's or Al Pacino's. Anyway, that was number 7, excuse me. This is number 6. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, another Jack Nicholson extravaganza. Great performance. Quintessential Jack as Randall Patrick McMurphy, who is an inmate now at the state hospital, mental hospital in Oregon. And the head nurse there, Louise Fletcher, great performance as Nurse Ratched. And Jack is accused of maybe faking his mental illness to get out of a prison sentence for statutory rape. May or may not be true. Him and Nurse Ratched have some great confrontations. He meets a lot of interesting characters in the nut house. And the bottom line here, this is a man versus society, and a man who is anti-establishment all the way, who doesn't want to play by anybody's rules but his own. And he's going to teach these other guys who are sort of under the thumb of the head nurse, and he gives them something to hang on to, and he becomes a leader in their little social meetings, and lets them branch out a little bit of their horrific lives. Jack Nicholson's best performance ever, in my opinion. He won the Oscar, thank God, after being nominated 4 times before this. And it'll always be one of my favorite, probably is my favorite movie of all time. I identify with this guy. Jack Nicholson, number 6. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So we're in the top 5. And these, you can argue the order all you want, but this is the order I came up with today. Apocalypse Now is number 5. Francis Coppola's masterpiece from 1979. Vietnam War, very surreal. Every trick in the book. It took him 3 years to make the movie. People were having heart attacks, and they got caught in a typhoon, I believe, in the Philippines making it. There's a documentary that goes with this that tells you how hard it was to end up with this great movie. But Martin Sheen, Robert Duvall, and Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando as this complete loon at the end of the river where his assignment, Mr. Martin Sheen, is to assassinate Colonel Kurtz, who is now living among the natives at the end of this river. I guess it's the Mekong River in Vietnam. Dennis Hopper's there as well. You got young Lawrence Fishburne, Robert Duvall as an officer who's completely hell-bent on taking this beach so they can surf, and he's lost in the insanity of the war. That's one thing this movie does. It shows you how nuts war, how insane war is. Let's face it. To go over there and kill people on their own land for no real apparent reason. So this is just a great movie. You got Playboy bunnies being brought in. You got all kinds of nutty stuff. People chopping heads off and leaving them to scare the people that are searching for Kurtz. Just image after image that will blow your mind, and it's unforgettable. I saw it on the big screen in late '79 when it came out. Never forget it. I wish they would play it back again, because you lose a little impact on the small screen when you see this in a real theater. You know what a genius Coppola is. Some of these images are unbelievable. Number 4, The Deer Hunter, another Nam film. This one gets the nod a hair above Apocalypse because it is these guys from Western PA, Robert Duvall, Christopher Walken, and John Savage, 3 buddies from a steel town out in the Pittsburgh area, Clairton, PA. And it shows them prior to the wedding, their camaraderie, prior to the war, their camaraderie, their buddies, they drink together, they go to a wedding, they go deer hunting together, all the kibitzing and fooling around of guys at that age. And Meryl Streep is involved. She's the girlfriend of Christopher Walken. And these 3 guys eventually go to Vietnam. First of all, there's a 30-minute wedding in here, which is beautifully shot. You feel like you're one of the participants almost, or one of the invited guests. It's that good. And they go off deer hunting. And then all of a sudden they're in the trenches. They're in Nam, bombs going off, napalm going off. They get wounded. One of them is sent home. The other one goes missing. And the other one does his tour and comes back and has to deal with the, I guess it's trauma of what he witnessed, what happened to his friends, how he internalized everything, and just the realistic portrait of what these soldiers go through. And there's, of course, the classic Russian roulette scene with Walken and De Niro in these cages, bamboo cages along the river with rats and just insane stuff. Whether it was true or not, we don't know. Prisoner of war type stuff where they try and break you down. And De Niro, again, solid. I like this movie a little bit better because it's more realistic. This is a visionary movie. This one it shows you the heart and soul of these guys before the war, during the war, and when they come home from the war and the aftermath. An absolute classic movie. Doesn't get enough attention these days. Directed by Michael Cimino. He was another guy that made 2 or 3 films and he was gone. Anyway, this is a movie that doesn't get its just due, even though it won Best Picture. Not enough people talk about it today. The Deer Hunter from 1978. Absolutely legendary film. Top 3. Number 3 is Taxi Driver. As disturbing as it is, as hard to watch as some of it is, you can't take your eyes off this character study of Travis Bickle, played by Robert De Niro, 1976. You got Harvey Keitel, Sybil Shepherd, a young 13-year-old, I guess, Jodie Foster as a prostitute. Just sickening stuff, but it's so real on the streets of New York. Scorsese, of course, directs this, and he takes you into these brothels and sewer-like situations. You can almost smell the taxi cab this guy's driving with these degenerates in the back seat and all this, the histrionics going on outside the cab and people trying to have sex in the car and whatever. It's just absolutely deplorable at times, but it's so well done that you have to say, oh my God, there's a world like this out there. Yeah, and Scorsese, of course, he'll show it to you, warts and all, as we say. A legendary performance by De Niro, where he's looking at the mirror. It takes you into the insanity of a guy who's either alienated from society. Something has happened to this guy where he's warped. He makes up his own rules, his own truths, and everybody around him is vulnerable. So it's scary stuff. Taxi Driver, De Niro, Jodie Foster, Harvey Keitel in the back. Great stuff. All-time classic. Top 2 movies. Same director, Francis Coppola. Godfather 2 and Godfather 1. 2 is number 2, 1 is number 1. This whole series is just the best storytelling in the history of cinema, let alone the 70s. Number 2 is The Godfather 2, the continuing story of Michael Corleone as the Godfather at this point, the Don of the Mafia, who's become a ruthless man. His marriage is up for grabs with Diane Keaton. His own brother, Fredo, has betrayed him. He's taken power away from those under him who he's not sure he can quite trust or are not strong enough, like the Robert Duvall. And just a great performance by Al Pacino. You can see the stress on his face, the pressure that he's under to maintain his position. There's assassination attempts. There's people trying to get him. He doesn't know who he can trust, who he can't trust. And it's a 3-hour epic, taking over where the first movie leaves off. So there's a lot of stuff here in Miami and Cuba and, of course, Nevada, where the first Godfather was mainly set in New York City. This is later on in the series where Michael's branching out and trying to buy casinos, and he's in all kinds of stuff now as he's taken over. Absolute classic storytelling by Coppola. Great in every facet of filmmaking, but whether it be music, costume, editing, cinematography, everything's there. Godfather 2. And number 1, of course, is The Godfather, the original 1972 film starring Marlon Brando, this time as Don Corleone, and his 3 sons, played by James Caan, Al Pacino, and, of course, John Cazale as Fredo. Those are his 3 sons. He also has a 4th son or stepson played by Robert Duvall. They took him in when he was a young kid. So there's 4 young males here that are under the tutelage of Marlon Brando. And a lot of the story involves Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, who falls in love with Diane Keaton, a school teacher in Connecticut, I believe. And eventually Pacino has to go head-to-heads with the bigwigs who are trying to eliminate his father. And he draws the short straw, or actually volunteers, to get these guys in a restaurant and take care of business. And then after that, he eventually goes to Italy to hide for a while till things calm down and cooler heads prevail. Sonny, played by James Caan here, is the loose cannon of the family, and he has some great scenes. Fredo, played by John Cazale, is the weak brother, and he doesn't really come into his own until Godfather 2. Talia Shire plays Connie, the sister, who has her own drama going with her abusive husband. And, of course, Caan has to deal with that while Michael's over in Italy. There's all kinds of storylines here. Captivating, wonderful drama. The ins and outs of the hierarchy of the mob, but even the underlings like Richard Castellano's character, Clemenza, and Abe Vigoda's character as well. They're all interesting to watch, and some of them are going to come out of this unscathed, and some of them aren't. And that's part of the fun of watching the movie. All-time classic, probably my favorite movie of all time, The Godfather from 1972 by Francis Coppola. So when all's said and done, Francis Coppola has 3 of the top 10 movies in both the Godfather films and The Conversation. So that's it. That's the top 10 of the 1970s, a great decade for movies. I hope you enjoyed. If not, make some comments below. Let me see what your top 10 list is. And I love a good debate. Tell me where I'm wrong, which of these 10 films you would kick out, and what you would replace them with. It'd be great to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. See you next time.